Hi, welcome to another stream. I'm Alan, aka Gorilla with the Brush. And this is a special video because this is going to be pre-recorded. So this is not live. The chat is not live for me. I'm not able to see the chat while I'm streaming. If this streams on Twitch, then I will try to be on at the same time as you, answer any questions. If you do post in the comments, I'll be commenting along with you. If I'm not available to stream, if I'm using this as a replacement stream because I'm out of town or something like that, then just enjoy this presentation. So in this stream, what we're going to do is we're going to finish Allie. What I've done since the last time we worked on her is I attached her to the plinth and I glued her down, but it left a gap between her base and the plinth. So I used green stuff to fill in around that. Sorry if you're hearing odd noises. My wife is outside messing with the pool equipment. So used green stuff to fill in that gap and smooth it all out so that her base is kind of seamless down into the plinth. So I'm going to start off by base coating. And what I did was I mixed up, I tried a few different colors. I'm trying to match the brown primer that's down there. So I used a mix of the Warfront US Dark Brown and the Scale Color Walnut to get kind of just the right brown that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to base coat all of this area. I've had a few requests lately to do basing videos, do more videos showing what different techniques for working on bases. I should also mention that I primed this base using black primer, but then I went ahead and used my airbrush since I had it on to use black Vallejo Air, Game Air, to actually give it a nice even coat with paint. So this plinth is done, which I'm going to be try to be careful and not get paint on the black areas. So I'd like for those to just be done. If I get a little bit down there, I can touch it all up. I'm probably not going to do a lot of leaning her to the side, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing okay with this. The plinth makes her a little heavier, and she's just attached with some blue tack to this this cork holder that I've got her on. So I'd rather not tempt fate and have gravity make her fall off the cork. All sorts of fun noises happening on the side of the stream today here. My cat just walked in the room and decided it's time to announce his presence. I don't know if you guys are hearing him. He's just walking around the room moaning. Now in previous videos when I was working on Allie, I was really certain that I was going to try using weathering pigments with her for the first time. But I've changed my mind on that for a couple reasons. First, I'm still a little intimidated by trying those out. And I really don't want to mess up a model I've spent so much time working on. I really want to probably just get maybe like a car model. Because I also bought some of the special paints to do like engine oil stains and rust and all sorts of stuff like that. So what I might do is get a model kit from the hobby store, like an old model car or something like that, and just practice rust, practice oil stains, practice using weathering powders, and just really learn all of that stuff rather than try to learn it while I'm working on a model that I care a lot about. So I'm just going to do her base more like the way I normally do bases. I might try to do just ever little bit of dry brushing up on her boots, carry some of the colors from the base up onto her boots to give the suggestion that her boots are a little dusty from the terrain she's walking around in. And when you're doing this, if you end up getting a little bit of paint like up onto the boots of the model or something, because obviously you're painting this after the rest of the model is done, it's okay. You can use grass or other stuff I'm going to add onto the base. I can cover up the spots where I don't want that, or using dry brushing to suggest some mud or dirt. Can bring that up onto the boot. Make it look more intentional. I'm going to dry brush just a little bit of this very, very carefully. I said carefully. Got a glob. I think some of the wet paint from the base. I think I touched it with my brush and then pulled it up onto the boot. And I'm going to do some on the tire as well. And the gas mask also. I'm going to use that paint again probably. After I do these bricks, I'll probably come back and dirty them up some. So now I'm going to dry brush a little bit lighter color on here. Let me use... I'm going to use GW Taulerin Sand. Now normally when I do bases, as you might have seen with my some of the doors I've been working on, I will use the Vallejo texture paints, or even glue little rocks down onto the base. It gives a really, really strong texture that you can dry brush really easily and pick out those highlights. This is a much more subtle dirt texture. So the dry brushing is going to pick up a little bit differently on this. Should still be fine though. I'm not going to worry so much if I end up tapping any of the other base elements or her boots, because we'll get some of that same color dust up on them that way and sell the nature of the ground dust getting up onto her boots and blowing up onto the tire and the gas mask. Keep some of that paint around too. Next up, I'm going to go to Carrick Stone, which is another GW color. I didn't really paint her with any of those. I just have a lot of these old GW colors lying around from when I used to use them. So I use them on a lot of things like basing and stuff where I'm not worrying about trying to get the effects that I like to get with my Scale 75 paints. And just repeat the process. This one I might go just a touch lighter on. I might not go as extreme. Focus more on the slightly raised areas. Again, keep that color around. And finally, use just a bit of Jack Bone, which is a P3 color. You can substitute any paints you have that are just, you know, these kind of khaki colors. And this one I'm going to be the least, I'm going to use the least amount of any of them. Sure to get some up on her boots. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use a little bit of the Scale 75 flat black. And I'm going to mix a really, really thin glaze. My goal here is to create some shadows on the base, because right now it's kind of a uniform color. So I'm going to glaze some of this black around her feet. Anywhere where there might be a hint of shadow. So down around the tire, around the gas mask. And what's nice about the Scale 75 flat black is, as its name implies, it's a very flat color. So it dries to a really matte finish, which makes it the best black for glazing because it really just darkens areas up and then disappears, because it doesn't shine, it doesn't create, you know, any attention to itself. It really just sort of disappears into the shadow, which is exactly what we want. And I'm just going to put it a few random spots to give some variety to the base. And I'm going to have to do several passes of that. But I wanted to get that started, and I'm going to start working on these bricks. Now, if you watched the base that I did for the Scribe, the Dwarf Scribe a few weeks ago, I'm going to basically use the same technique for this model. going to start off by basing it with Rainy Gray. I'm going to use a little bit of a red brick for this though. Let that dry. While that's drying, come back with some more of the flat black. Alright, on the stone, I want to work up to a darker red. I'm going to start with Deep Red by Scale Color. Get it pretty thin. And I'm going to sort of tap around the edges. Leave a little bit of light right in the middle. I know it looks really intense right now, but we will take care of that. I'm going to also make just a very, very thin glaze. Just hit the middle a little bit, give it a little bit of hint of color. Go to another color darker. Let's go with Indian Shadow from Scale Color. Again, focus on kind of tapping along the edge. And even darker. Let's go with Tindalos Red. And same process. Do a quick another pass with the black. One of the nice things about keeping it really nice and thin is that it's hard to put too much on, because it's a very subtle transition. As it dries, you're not going to have too much. It's not going to be like just painting on straight black paint, even though that's what we're doing. It's just very, very watered down. But it's just going to slowly darken these areas. And so you can just go over it several passes, stop whenever it looks right to you. Okay, back to the red. I'm going to go to Arbuckle's Brown, which will be the darkest of the colors I'll use. It's kind of a reddish, really dark reddish brown. Go back to the flat black. This time, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it on a dry brush. Don't need to water it down for this. And I want this slightly to have a little more paint than a normal dry brush, because I'm going to be dabbing the bricks. The goal of adding some texture to them. I'm going to go back with like an off-white color, Thar Brown. Do the same thing. Again, just indicate a little bit of texture to the brick, you know, the pits and the different. Got a little bit happy on that. Let's knock this one down with a little more black. All right. Another pass with the flat black. And let's use the Tindalos red to do the final passes on the brick. So mix up a glaze. This is a nice dark brick color. Well, that's drying. There's a few pieces of wood that are sticking out of this base. I don't really want to go crazy, like painting wood texture or something. This looks like old dried wood sticking in the ground. So let me just use Thar Brown. Really just dry brush it. On the top of this plinth, some of the bristles from the dry brush were like breaking down, I think. Just like a bunch of microscopic stray hairs. And what I'm going to do is once that dries, I'm going to do a final pass over these bricks with the flat black to just really try to knock down some of the brightness. And then I'm going to go back and dry brush some of the dust onto it that will really then help to tie it in with the rest of the base. I'm also, as I do this, I'm going to go off the edges, really get the black in the dirt area around the bricks. So hopefully you can see how this base is really coming along. Looks pretty natural, looks like a nice dirt. I'm going to put some grass on this base as well, put a little texture on there. But that will come in a minute. It's one of those times when it's good to have like two things to be working on, because I can just set her to the side to finish drying while I'm working on something else. I'll take a second to just show you what I have been working on. You've probably, if you've been following along with me, you know that recently I've been doing a lot of these dwarves for Atlantis Miniatures. So I'm working on the male warriors at the moment. And it's been really fun to mess around with all different color schemes. And one of the requests from Atlantis was to really bring some variety into the models, not just paint like 10 models that all looked exactly the same, but give some indications of different ways people might be able to paint them. So this guy's got a nice battered shield. You can see some of the wood showing through the paint job. At the moment, he's got a very cool color scheme going on, cool in terms of color. He's got a blue striped like tunic on. His beard is gray, but there's a lot of blue undertones in there. And while his skin is kind of a pinkish, it's not such a cool color scheme, but the shaved head, the side shave on him, brings some of that cool tones into his skin color. So he's got a very cool palette going on. This guy's got a very warm palette going on. It's something I'll try to maintain. So for example, he'll just have leather armor. I'll keep him a lot browner. This will be like maybe a warm gray for his tunic. It's hard to see, but he's got green with a little bit of a hint of a pattern in this underclothing he's got on. And I'm also working on this guy. He's kind of a mix. He'll be sort of a balanced color scheme. He's got a little bit of a tartan showing. So those are the guys I've been working on. Besides those three, there's only two more models to finish off. So there's this villager. We've got the skin tone down, but I need to finish her. And then there's the troll hunter, which I haven't even started, but she's got this big two-handed axe, and she's got some troll heads down at her feet. She's stepping on one of them. She's got a bear pelt that she's wearing with the bear head, kind of like open jaw, like sitting as a helmet for her. So she's going to be really fun. I'm going to do a written tutorial for her when I get to it. All right, so this is probably dry enough to get back to work on this. I'm going to go back to the base color again. And just carefully dry brush over the brick. Go to that next color. think, what did you do, Talarn sand or Shabdi? No, I think it was a Talarn sand. Whatever. It's like a khaki, like a mustard khaki color. And just work our way back down the colors we used on the base. The last one, the Jack Bone, sort of probably overwatered it for purposes of dry brushing. So just use a little new dollop of paint. And there we go. So you can see it no longer really pops out super red. It just kind of blends down into the base, but gives a little bit of a different color and a little different texture in there. So now comes the fun part. I mean, it's all fun. That was fun too. But we're going to put a little bit of grass on here. So I got this color grass, which is kind of a more dead grass look, which is going to be a lot better than like a bright green or just like a solid dark green. But what I might do, like I have this other mix that's a little bit of a mix of the dead green and the bright green, but I'm wondering if this one might be best with a little bit of the dark green mixed into the I'm actually going to try doing a little bit of a custom mix to see what this looks like. So I'm going to mix some of the dry green, just a little bit of the dark green. Give it a shake. I don't have any, they do make some that's like totally like a dead green look. I think I do like this. So I'm going to try that. I think I bought most of that stuff from Scenic Express, which is a website sells like model train, terrain, sells basing materials like that. There's a few different websites, but I kind of warn you, if you start snooping around those websites, you might end up placing a fairly large order because they just have so many cool things. So many cool things. Okay, so you just need some PVA glue. Elmer's glue works just fine. And I'm just going to put a few dollops here and there. just kind of take a tool. I use this like prong tool that I use to open up my Scale 75 paints. I just use it to spread glue. You can use a toothpick. And really just about anything you do will probably look good. I kind of tend to focus grass on slightly shaded regions of a model. So if you think of an area that doesn't necessarily have tons of grass, you know, like a scrubland like this, one of the places grass is likely to grow is like right along things. So like there's a downed tree, so like a log just sitting there or whatever. You know, you get those weeds that tend to just thrive right there. And I'm going to focus some of it around the bricks. This is also one of those times if you have some imperfections where you got some paint on the boots or something, you can put the grass right up to that section. Help to hide what's going on. I'll just use this. I just set it on there and kind of tap it into place. You can use a tool if you need to. I want to put a little bit of pressure on where I know the glue is to really get some of that grass to take hold. Give it a good 30 seconds or so to set. I mixed it in a smaller container. Usually with the larger container, it's a little bit easier to save your grass when you tap it off. And go back, and if there's any spots that didn't really take very well, we can touch those up. Now, once you've got it like this, obviously there's some grass on the base that we don't want on there, but also it's just kind of been matted down from when I've pushed it into place. So we're going to blow on it, kind of blow on it from a slightly downward angle, but that'll blow the grass off, and it'll also cause the stuff that's on the base to start standing up. Put a little bit more here. Now, one of the things you can do if you put grass on like this and you end up finding that maybe it's a little stark, like it's a little too green for the model, Once the paint's dry, you can actually do some gentle dry brushing. You know, a little bit more paint on your brush than what you would normally have for dry brushing, but just a little gentle dry brushing of the grass with a, you know, something like an Iroko, some color like this, or a, you know, and it'll make the grass look a little more dead. But you can also do so they make these little tufts, which look a little bit more like, as opposed to grass, it's more like small plants, little tufts, you know, where you might have like a weed or something like that. And they make them in all different colors. And so if you find the right color that will match with your model, you can add some of these on there too. So I kind of like this one here, the short buffalo grass tufts from the late summer. And you can mix and match a couple of these if you want. I need to go grab my other glue. Hold on. Alright, so for this, just take an old blister pack. These work better with super glue. These tufts, what I mean. Just get some on your blister. And then I use a small pair of pliers. What you do is you just pluck off some of the tufts. It's about the size that you want. Dip it in the glue. And then tap it onto the model. And they have lots of different sizes of these, so you can get a nice variety. Mix up the color so you don't just have that one color of grass on the base. Like I said, feel free to mix and match different versions of this. Again, this can be found at Scenic Express or any of those online scenery places. Depending on your local game store, they may or may not carry some of this. And there we go. So what I'm going to do once she is dry, once all that glue is dry, then I'm going to take a soft brush. I'm going to brush off all of the loose grass that's on here. I'm going to go around the edge and just touch up right along the edge where I was painting the base. There's a little bit that got down on the black, so I'll touch that up too. And then I'm going to give her a spray with dull coat and she'll be done. So there we go. That's it. That's Allie from start to finish. You have basically every minute that I've spent painting her, other than things like just base coat, like priming, or I think there was just 1 or 2 videos where I touched something up, like I explained, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to touch these areas up because there's a few like rough edges or something. But you have the entire process from start to finish to produce a display quality model. Hopefully this has been really informative for you, and thanks for tuning in, and thanks for staying with me on this whole journey. I look forward to the next model that we'll paint from start to finish together.